Hey, brassfacts here. This is going to be kind of an off-the-cuff style videos. I have, spark notes ready for me, but beyond that, we're going to go off the cuff here. But I think this is one of those where it makes more sense to just kind of talk. So we're basically coming off the heels of what I think is kind of one of the strongest tactical pushes the industry has ever seen, and we're getting a little bit of pushback. I'm noticing with a lot of people, like on Discord, my friend circles, friends of friends, is just massive burnout in the preparedness and firearms sphere, more so than normal, right? And they're pretty vocal about it too. So we're going to kind of talk about that today. So no recce shit, no what gear to buy, what LPVO, what laser aiming module is giving me stomach ulcers this week. Just talking about sustainability in prepping, right? How to continue prepping in the long term, because that's kind of the whole point of it. I'm going to mention firearms training, and who knows, we'll throw some life goals in there as well. So obviously, straight up, I'm just a dude disguised as another dude making gun videos on the internet. I'm not an internet, gun yogi with pools of knowledge and wisdom beyond my years. I'm just figuring this shit out too. So I'm not even where I want to be, but I have been doing preparedness for about 10 years, which has covered a lot of cycles, and I've learned some lessons that kind of help me just continue preparing long term. Right, because I do videos on the internet, but that's only been a small percentage of it. I've been doing food, water, skills, firearms, whatever preps for, a decent amount of time. Not forever, but this is more so for those that have been in this thing for maybe only about 2 to 3 years, or maybe they've only been serious about it for, 2 to 3 years. And every time a new product, a new whatever, or every time they look at the bill for something, they kind of begin to find they're getting lost in the sauce and really getting tired of this whole preparedness thing. In order to not burn out of prepping, it's actually generally a pretty good idea to be clear about what exactly you're accomplishing by being a prepared citizen. All too often, I think people think, and we see this parroted on the internet in terms of how they talk about it, that preparedness is this thing to safeguard you against certain, thing. But that's not really true when we boil down to it. We see this a lot with the detractors and critics of preparedness, where they're like, hey, all this shit's pointless because you're probably just going to get popped by a dude with a Mosin. Which, as an aside, that analogy doesn't even make sense anymore. Mosins are kind of expensive, and they've been nerfed on Tarkov. Or the other version is, most people are going to die in an event like this, why even prepare? It's not going to help. Sure, yes, you are probably correct. You probably are going to get popped by a dude with a hunting rifle. You probably are not going to make it through one of these extreme events. Sure. But that's not what preparedness is for. Preparedness is not about absolutes. The world is not about absolutes. All preparing is for is to increase your odds. And the more you prepare, the more your odds go up. But it's never an absolute chance that if I buy night vision gear, if I buy thermals, if I do this, I'm going to win that gunfight, or I'm going to survive, 100% of the time. If I have all the food, it's going to be a guarantee. None of this is a guarantee, and the issue is a lot of people are repeatedly viewing this as a guarantee. And when you view it from that perspective, oh yeah, not having thermals is basically a death sentence, so what's the point of preparing, right? But that's not how it works. We're simply trying to increase our odds of making it through whatever ends up coming. And we don't even know what's coming. So that's one of the first things you need to do in the preparedness sphere, is to recalibrate your thought of what preparedness is. Right? It's simply just trying to increase our odds of making it through whatever comes our way. Okay, I think the big thing that really messes people up in terms of preparedness long term is this attitude that preparedness is for something coming soon. Right? You know what I'm talking about, where people are fearful of, oh shit, something's coming this month, something's coming next week, something's coming this year, it's coming soon, I know it. And that's healthy to a degree, right? A lot of us have become preppers, not out of some extreme, logic, but we feel a foreboding of something to come. Maybe it was an election, natural disaster. You feel something's in your jimmies. But I hate to spoil the fun, especially in first world nations. We have no idea what's coming. Whatever we don't know what is coming is probably not coming tomorrow, or the year after, or the year after, it's probably not even coming this decade. Every generation has had their, boogeyman, their thing that they're afraid of coming, but it hasn't come. Now, one day society is probably going to roll snake eyes and something is going to come, but you're going to do a terrible job predicting it. Your gut feeling is not a good indicator. It's basically the equivalent of astrology sign for men. You know the phrase, it's not a race, it's a marathon, right? Which is terrible, having done both. Marathons fucking suck. to train for. Races are way easier to prep for. But that's the whole thing. We have no idea what's coming. We don't know when it's coming. So going hard for 5 years because you think something is going to come soon is a great way to eventually just burn out because you're going way too hard and then you're not ready for if something does come, on the long term where, probability becomes more likely. Now, if you can stay at this heightened level of alert and act rationally, then there's nothing technically wrong with fearing something coming soon and acting accordingly. But most people can't act rationally when under this duress of something is coming soon, and they act irrationally. They purchase well outside their means, well outside their budget, or they purchase honestly the wrong priority of items. We're talking food, water, training is being sidelined for bigger boomsticks, cooler tactical gear. Remember, society is designed to make you feel nervous because it turns out a nervous person is way more useful to a lot of corporations than a perfectly content one. Content people don't consume. Content people don't click on the news every single day. We are monkeys with a god complex and fundamentally hardwired to be alert for potential threats, and that is exploited regularly. Kind of anecdotalizing it, that's a word. When I first got into prepping, I was reading stuff like blogs and websites, shithitthefanplan.com. What a trip going back to that website, by the way. Every single day, it was something new. Something's coming. Oh, this thing, this military exercise, this, that. Something is coming tomorrow. And something never came tomorrow because that's not how the world works. Look at media. Media in the US is overwhelmingly negative. There's tons of studies on this, that media in the US is just designed to be negative compared to any other country on the world. Or look at YouTube's trend. Biden's face is plastered on frickin' everything with the subcaption, "This is it." It's so predictable at this point that I just want to stick my face in a blender. But here's the thing. All of these things and more are just trying to sell you something. Look at those blogs. Look how often they mention selling you gold. The media, they need viewers in an age where their medium is probably dying. So they're going harder and harder on the negative because negative is what gets you to click. Those YouTube videos, they need views. Trust me. I'm a washed up YouTuber as well. So once again, I'm not saying something isn't coming. Something probably is coming at some point. Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with chasing better gear, chasing that diminishing return. Remember, preparedness is all about increasing the odds, building on your survival plan, go for it, right? But do not use the fear of literally the world ending tomorrow, or I guess metaphorically ending tomorrow, to be the main excuse to go into debt, to buy the next new thing, to chase whatever trend. The baseline for preparedness is like a month of food, water, and a handgun for concealed carry and the skills to use it. Everything else is gravy on top, and we have a lot of time to work with. Okay, let's move on for that one. That one was a little preachy. The next thing on my little fucking note card here is make a group. I've recently discussed this in making my team video, but really that's probably one of the bigger things to kind of make preparedness more palpable, right? There are very few people that can just roll solo the entire times in terms of managing this stuff. Now, obviously having a team is super practical in quantitative ways, right? Being in a team, more of you is better. It makes things easier to do whatever. Yeah, sure. I discussed that in another video. Yeah. But the reality is companionship, people to work with, people to push with, people to train with, people to bounce ideas off of, people to keep yourself honest, and really just to make it all more enjoyable is critical to having preparedness be a long-term lifestyle goal. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your friends, I don't know. Pick one. For the record, people online don't count. They're useful, they work, and to a degree, there'll be a lot of your friends in this, just due to the nature of how society works now. But people online aren't really real people. They're all made up. No, it's not quite the same. Having people in the real world is also really useful to get you out of the echo chamber of the internet, where everyone seemingly has night vision, thermals, the best comms equipment, a 13-step complex preparedness plan that they've drilled for on repeat. The real world is actually just a lot more humbler. It isn't just YouTubers and influencers that have access to a free world-class gun range and can train tri-weekly and look like aim-point snap shooters on CSGO. When you contextualize it, instead of comparing yourself to people online, which are the pick of the litter essentially because those rise to the top, it becomes a lot more bearable to become preparedness, and your shortfalls don't feel as crushing as they really are because that's, once again, part of the process. Absolutely push yourself and aim to be the best you can be at some point in the future, but understand, it's a process. It's something that takes time. Alright, the next thing I got on my list, it just says go fucking train. This one's obvious, right? You hear it all the goddamn time. Every video, Grantham's like, oh, you gotta go train. Yeah, of course. You need to get good, gamer. There's more to training than just being good at using your equipment, which is absolutely important. So a lot of prepping burnout is simply because people don't put the same effort into training that they do into getting ready for training, and it ends up like a giant Ouroborean circle with no point. Look, I'm not a smart man, Jenny. I don't have any particular insights or super secret sauce that allows me to view gear better and make these POV videos, build videos, whatever. I don't have any special secrets here. All I really do that functionally sets me apart is I use this gear. Once you use gear, you're going to develop an innate understanding of what is good, bad, and everything in between. Barrel length, mil versus MOA, BDC versus dialing, LPVO versus red dot. You're going to find that even minimal training, once a month, once every 2 months, with any frequency and seriousness, you're going to find that a lot of this stuff is like 90% subjective and 10% objective, and we can't even agree on that last 10%. You'll find past a certain point, you're going to figure out what you like and what works for you. Like the perfect example, every time another LPVO is dead video drops, I laugh. You know, hypothetically, I just get more depressed, actually. It's a good medium for discussion, so I don't have a problem with this, per se. But I do get a little sad at the people legitimately selling their LPVOs because, oh shit, fuck, I brought the wrong product. Because someone they respect in the industry dropped their opinion of, yeah, I think I agree, LPVOs kind of suck. What I'm getting at here, there's a lot of burnout because people feel like, I mentioned this before, kind of being on this rat track where they buy gear, then that gear is shit, so they sell that gear and buy a new gear. Or it might not even be internet, justified. They'll see an ACOG and they're like, I want a fucking ACOG, and then I'm done. Just kidding, I want this new LPVO, and then I'm done. Just kidding, I want this thing, and then I'm done. And this just goes on and on and on, and then one day you look at your budgeting, or you look at how much money you spent, or you just get tired of constantly wanting something else, and you burn out. And I've seen this just so frequently that I think this is probably one of the major reasons for prepper burnout. But it turns out if you just use your gear a little bit, you will, probably get more comfortable with your gear and be happy with what you have. But if not, you'll kind of figure out what makes sense for you and what doesn't make sense for you. I love LPVOs. Hop is more of a red dot guy, right? We figured it out for ourselves and we don't feel completely crushed every time someone mentions that X product is dead because we know what we like. Now, to dial it back a bit, I'm not saying just ignore what everyone on the internet says, especially those with more experience behind, a wide range of products, those with real-world experience, or those that just, happen to have all of the above. And after all, you kind of have to do a little bit of trust falling because most people aren't as fortunate as me or others to be able to shoot every single week, or at least even every single month. Some of that is just not doable, especially if you're, you live on the East Coast or the West Coast, there's just nowhere to shoot. Okay, here's another aspect that I've noticed, and this one's a funny one because this one's kind of based out of my Discord because I see it all the time. Stop going for side grades or side upgrades. So if you've played an RPG, an MMO, or whatever, you know what a side grade or a side upgrade is. It's something that has roughly the same stat allocation, right? But it's slightly more optimal such that it ends up being better than what you currently have. Right? So you have, your piece with, I don't know, like fucking 10 strength and 3 critical strike chance, and then you have another piece with 10 strength and 3 attack speed, stat. And you like attack speed for some reason. So of course, that other piece is better. That works in video games, but that doesn't really make sense here, right? We see this all the time. I have my insert $300 to $350 piece of kit. Ooh, that $300 to $350 piece of kit did well in a review and looks slightly better. I shall sell my $300 to $350 piece of kit and buy that other piece of kit because it's slightly better and I need to be better and it will bring me momentary happiness. Dude, I hate to break it to you, that's cope. There are very few scenarios where something similarly priced is going to be exponentially better than the other thing. If you want to gain more performance via gear or more capability via gear, you're going to have to spend significantly more money. So, personally for me, just stick with your current thing until you grow out of it, or you don't grow out of it and just stick with it until it breaks. Unless you bought a Gen 1 Strike Eagle, then yeah, sorry dude, you fucked up. Sell that shit ASAP, get something worth a fuck. Oh shit. I mean, I'm guilty about this. I'll buy a backpack and it's a pretty damn good backpack. And then I'll be like, man, but that backpack over there does this thing slightly better. Let me go get that backpack. And blah, 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 blah. And I've ended up with 12 different products that are all functionally identical, all have a slight Achilles heel. Man, that grass sure does look greener. Another aspect, and this is less what causes burnout, but can significantly help burnout from not occurring, is actually get serious. Yeah, it sounds kind of weird when you consider the rest of the video so far, but so a lot of people really get into the firearms sphere, they buy all the cool gear, they buy all the cool equipment, but then they never really use it. Now, they go to the range and train, they'll maybe run some drills they saw on trexarms.com, or they'll do something of the matters, but then it really kind of just hangs there and plateaus. But something I've really found that give a lot of meaning and a lot of purpose and a lot of competitiveness, a lot of whatever, to really make this stuff more enjoyable is to have a purpose behind it. So for example, if you want to get better at shooting, well, competition is something that I hear time and time again, where people get into competition, it really lights that competitive bug under them, and they really get into shooting it. It gives you that purpose, and it makes burnout unlikely, because now you're really having fun again, beyond just, chasing different gear builds and setups. Similarly, something I've been doing recently to really kind of push myself is to kind of go back to basics. Set a baseline for all of my abilities, and then laser focus on each one of these things and try to kind of level myself up as a shooter. And remember, preparedness, we're obviously hyper-focused on the gun stuff here because this is a gun-related channel, but preparedness is a lot more than GANs, right? Focusing on other stuff, learning new skills. Comms is a very common one that people are getting into. Getting into comms is frustrating, but it's also a very satisfying experience when you finally nail a really good comm setup with your group. Get out and do something other than shooting that involves all this tactical gear. So going rucking, going camping, whatever, and using this gear gives us, for starters, it's just a fun thing to do, but kind of contextualizes all of this equipment together and generally actually helps burnout because now you're starting to see the big picture once again. You're doing stuff with your gear, you're LARPing with your gear, so on and so forth, and it doesn't cost any ammo, which is, a big part of why this hobby is so fucking frustrating, is because the ammo's just fucking going higher and higher. Right? So a big part of preparedness is, so we have our food, we have our water, we have our guns. Okay, let's start actually using it beyond just shooting at the flat range and getting fucking good El Prez splits. And kind of to tie us into the video, the sequel to this video, so to speak, because I did end up splitting this into two parts, is, firearms and the relationship with firearms is a very small component of preparedness. For starters, the likelihood that you need to use these firearms, or more importantly, a scenario that precipitates the usage of firearms, is quite rare, right? And people finally end up realizing that oh wow, I'm going all in on these firearms, but the actual scenarios when I use or need all this stuff is virtually zero, and then they get a huge amount of apathy and they're like, fuck it, and now they don't prepare anymore. But that kind of view of preparedness, this all or nothing scenario, really betrays the versatility of actual smart preparedness plans. Yes, most of us are probably preparing, especially because we have all these fancy guns, LPVOs, magnification on a rifle, night vision, whatever. We're preparing for essentially Mad Max, and that's true. But much in the same way that the US military is largely constructed as a conventional military, but then ends up doing other stuff like patrolling the seas, humanitarian aid, and then, fighting dudes in mud huts in desert-ass countries. Us too, we can prepare for the most extreme scenario, we can train to a very high degree, because that's what it means to be American, but we can also scale it back, and only because we suddenly, at a certain point in our life, no longer believe that the most extreme scenario is likely, or we no longer think the juice is worth the squeeze, as so many often find throughout their prepping career, doesn't mean all this shit is now useless, put it in the bin, fuck you, time to get a new hobby of, golf or something. We can still use a lot of this preparedness, this knowledge, this training to do lesser things, right? We can now prepare for partial civil unrest. We can now prepare for a scenario where maybe the government kind of begins to crumble around the edges and monopoly of violence isn't just the government. We can prepare for scenarios where it's simply just a natural disaster going absolutely ham in your backyard, right? All of this stuff that we're using, yes, it's geared towards one of the more extreme scenarios, still absolutely works in all other scenarios. I'm looking at the time, I'm at 23 minutes unedited here, so I'll probably chop it down to 16. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I could talk about this shit for hours, but I'm a little concerned about what this is going to look like on the editing floor. So just giving you a couple pointers on what worked for me, what didn't work for me. There's a bit of stream of consciousness, we'll go back to the scripted stuff. I just think it kind of it fit for this video. Also, I cut out, my notes into 2 sections. I'll have a second video. This was sustainable prepping. And the next video, or whenever I drop it, is going to be something called realistic prepping, where I talk about certain things and kind of more adjusting your standards to what is reasonable for most people. And I'll do that one later. So I think you'll find this video was very gear-oriented, but I think everyone fucks up prepping on the final inning with guns, right? The most of prepping is fundamentally pretty fucking easy. You're stashing nuts in a tree for the winter, right? Except the winter is nuclear, and instead of nuts, it's garbage bags, toothpaste, food, water, TP, and all this bullshit, right? But that's fundamentally not too hard to do. I just find that a lot of us get bent out of shape on the, gun portion of the equation, and that's what causes them to just ruin the entire rest of prepping for themselves, because it's the most expensive, it's the most frustrating, and it's what we're most focused on. So I've been focusing on that here. Anyway, right, hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know if you like this style. It was a lot more rambly, a lot more ranty, but I think it's good to discuss topics like this, but I may have that completely off. Okay, anyway, blah, 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 blah. Bye.